A thing I used to wonder when I was younger is was the calling of the Gentiles was it secondary to Israel's failure. So in other words, if Israel would not have failed, but they would have followed Christ fully, if they would have been faithful, would the Gentiles have been grafted in? And what used to make me wonder this is that there are some verses that can kind of give you an impression that that is what the Bible means. And one of the first ones is in Matthew chapter 15, verse 25. It says, "The woman came and knelt before him and said, 'Lord, help me.' And Jesus replied, 'It's not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs.'" And so we see here what Jesus is saying is that he did not come initially to give her this bread, but it was initially for the people of Israel, the children of God. And if you go back to verse 23, right above it, it says, "But Jesus did not answer a word. So his disciples came and urged him, 'Send her away, for she keeps crying out after us.' And he answered, 'I was only sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel.'" So when I was young, I always wondered, I was like, well, people quote these promises, out of Psalms, out of these Old Testament books, and I'd always wonder, well, those covenants were not initially for us. According to these verses, it was for the people of Israel. So why do so many believers today, since majority of us in churches are Gentiles, quote these Old Testament verses? Some verses that people would give me, like I would ask all these pastors for years, and many Christians, I would ask them these questions, and a lot of the verses they would give, like the main one had to do with Romans 2:11 that says, "For God does not show favoritism." What's interesting about this verse is this is not talking about covenantal relationships. It has nothing to do with what applies to us versus what applies to Israel. But what it says right under that, right under verse 11, it says, "For God does not show favoritism. All who sin apart from the law will also perish apart from the law." So what this has to do with is sin. So this verse is saying no matter if a Gentile sins, no matter if an Israelite sins, they will be judged according to the sin that they would do. It was a while later that I finally realized that this is not exactly what the Bible is saying, that we can have faith in the Old Testament being also applying to the Gentiles. And what brought me to that conclusion was two verses. And the first one is Ephesians chapter 1 and verse 5, and it says, "In love, he," this is God, "predestined us for adoption to sonship through Jesus Christ in accordance with his pleasure and will." So what's so important about that is we know from that verse that our adoption was ordained by God. It was predestined. There was nothing that could have stopped it. It was not based on the failure of Israel, because if that was the case, then it would have been conditioned on what Israel did and not predetermined by God. The second one, which is very interesting, is that his purpose was to create in himself one new humanity out of the two, so out of Israel and out of the Gentiles. And what's so interesting about this is that, Israel and the Gentiles, the church, is basically two separate units. You have the church and you have Israel. But what's interesting is that it says that he is making one new humanity out of the two. So the way that I look at this is that, God is, his purpose was from the very beginning, this one new humanity that the two would be. Not nationality, not any of that. And another thing that kind of was interesting to me, and that is in Romans 9. It's the only chapter you can find this in. It says that to Israel belongs the adoption. And so what you find in that is just as the Gentiles were adopted, so too was Israel adopted. But interestingly, that is the word of today, and I hope that y'all got a lot out of this. Hope this word is an encouragement that you can have faith that God's word does apply to you. You can use Psalms. You can have faith in the promises of God. Till next time.